Welcome to the Sunmall podcast, where we interview the stars of e-commerce.
I'm here with Parth, who's at Amazon right now, but he used to work at Dell and be one of the heads of the e-commerce platform. So my first question is, how did you get into the world of e-commerce?
I should say it was as accidental as me getting into the world of product management. Straight out of my grad school, I was looking for places to be. This was early 2010, and there are a few things really ramping up at that point. One was, of course, digital media and social media platforms, as well as notion of e-commerce had been around for a while. At first, I was looking at where there could be a conjunction of digital media and e-commerce, but eventually landed in core e-commerce experience space and product role. So it was accidental, just trying to land the right thing in product role, and e-commerce was it at that time.
That totally makes sense. I noticed in your background, and I think you just mentioned it, is you like had some experience in digital media before you started at Dell. How do you think that experience was helpful? And are there any kind of key lessons from that industry you think are useful in the e-commerce world?
Yeah, what it helped me with was in understanding the process engineering, right? Even in case of digital media, you do end up spending a lot of time engineering the processes to get your preferred outcome. In my first few months or quarters trying to do product management in e-commerce, I ended up using some of that experiences in mapping out just basics of processes, right? To be able to discover products or services that the customers want, to the point helping them compare and select what they really want to add to cart, and then actually just help them make the decision and say, hey, you know what? This is the right thing for me to purchase and make transactions. And so go through the checkout. But all in all, just being able to understand the process that is customer facing, as well as the process flow that has to happen behind the scene to make all those experiences work.
Totally makes sense. Basically, understanding the user in a very detailed or systematic way is helpful across many different roles. One thing I noticed on your site is you guys launched a couple of, one of them was like integrations with, I think, third party kind of ERPs. So how did you think about focusing on the core, your guys' experience, but also making these integrations and with for your customers? And how did you draw the line?
So let's put some context there for the listeners. In my first half of career as a product person in e-commerce, I did a lot of consumer or B2C facing experiences, right? Straight up helping e-commerce experience for events like Black Friday or Cyber Monday, very high volume e-commerce events. So that was one piece. What you are referring to about ERP systems and integration refers to the second half of my career as a product person in e-commerce, and that was for B2B businesses. So these are not consumers like you and I making purchase, but these are large enterprises and corporations making purchase either for their employees or to resell as a channel partner. And for example, even in your place of work, and this is for listeners, when you go to your internal tool like ServiceNow or Workday to place an order for a headphone or keyboard or laptop or monitors, all those things are essentially sending transactions to providers like Dell. That is where the notion of integrating with other ERP systems or procurement systems come in place, right? And it's a huge part of online e-commerce business where you just help other enterprises meet their needs for client products like, as I said, laptop monitors, keyboards, etc., as well as enterprise products such as servers, storage space, etc. Yeah, it was an easy decision to answer your question now that we are past the context. That is where our enterprise customers make purchase, and that is where our enterprise customers transact. By the way, I'm speaking in present tense. I used to work for Dell. But yeah, the fact hold that is where enterprise customers go to purchase electronic goods for their employees.
And I know you guys, I think, launched an API too. And so was that along the same lines, just helping those big enterprise customers get, get there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. In that enterprise e-commerce space, since the mid 70s, technologies were just interacting with each other using XML and some legacy proprietary standards. And all these ERP systems having been supporting those legacy e-commerce platforms, just use those old ways to transact online. So when we started looking at, for example, tools like ServiceNow, which had proliferated in workspace for employees to either stick it or make purchase for their own employee need, we realized that like APIs could be the right ways to go, right? That is where we said, okay, we'll continue doing this XML based interactions between supplier and the procurement system. But on the other side, for these modern platforms, it makes sense to provide APIs to view catalog of products, create quotes, submit orders, view order status, etc.
That totally makes sense. And so were the users of the APIs, you would expect the large enterprise to use it themselves, or like someone like ServiceNow, if they wanted to add your offering to their offerings, they would use the API, or who did you guys expect to use the APIs?
Yeah, so I spent about a year and a half doing that. And during that time, at least, it was directly the enterprise customer. I don't know how it works now or how they expanded, but at that point, yeah, if the enterprise customers had their own homegrown procurement system or an existing procurement system that did allow API integrations, then yeah, they were the one in charge.
That totally makes sense. So I think as you mentioned, so Dell sells a kind of wide array of products, right? So they can sell stuff for the data center, but they can also sell stuff for everyday use. So how did you guys think about segmenting the website and just the overall kind of when you're merchandising to almost completely different products and almost completely different buyers here?
Yeah, so it's been about 3 years since I left them, but back then, segmentation was based on a consumer persona and enterprise persona. There is also a notion of small businesses, so they don't really fall within the consumer space or large enterprises, but help meet the need of small businesses. And they all had diverse characteristics ranging from the volume of purchase or criteria for making decisions as to what to purchase, what not to purchase. So yeah, it was largely based on these two things as to what are they interested in, which persona is the one that make the purchasing decisions, and then the volume of purchase.
Sure. Were there any kind of specific things you noticed that might apply to other businesses about the differences between how consumers make purchases and how these businesses make purchases when they're making these purchases online?
Yeah, I think it anchors into the two things I was referring to. One, in a consumer space, you are influencing probably just one person, right? That, hey, you go buy this machine versus the other machine. So you are really influencing that one individual. In large enterprise sales, it's very likely that you are influencing the decision maker, right? You do, and it ends up becoming a lot more relationship based sales motion as well, where you try and help make sure the C-suite or decision makers are able to recognize the value of your brand, product, etc., and then they can make those large volume purchase decisions on behalf of their entire company or organization. Among many other things, it boils down to who you are influencing for the scale of purchase that is involved in consumer versus enterprise.
That totally makes sense. So I think you're implying that on the enterprise, for a lot of these companies, maybe you guys actually talk in person or stuff like that to some of the decision makers and then get them comfortable with the Dell platform and all the products. And then once they're comfortable or the key crew at at that company, then someone on their team would start buying online and making these bulk orders.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to continue repeating the thing. It's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. So one other thing is I noticed that I'm not sure if this was at your time, but there was like a push into self-serve and stuff like that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about more and any kind of rationale there.
Yeah. I'll add some context here for the listeners. So we piggybacking on what we were talking about just in previous question. Like once the decision makers decide that, hey, this is the brand or product or company we want to go with for these large volume purchases, it then becomes extremely critical that the integration between the supplier and the buyer is seamless so that when their employees or end customer end up going to buy the digital goods or electronic goods, it's easy for them. And historically, what had been happening is, and I'm not sure if it applies to other B2B commerce platform or not, but there is a there is usually a huge burden and time consumption involved in integrating supplier with the purchaser. It does usually involve understanding what procurement system they use or what ERP system they use as a purchaser, making sure that the product catalog is set up so that everything is visible in those procurement system. The transaction path works seamlessly so that those electronic orders just come in frictionless way, as well as all the logistical function around providing order status, etc., works just fine. It used to be extremely involved process. It could still be as a B2B commerce industry, but that is what I tried addressing in some of my later years in product role for B2B commerce. I was trying to figure out how do I help both parties, the supplier party as well as purchaser party, spend the least amount of time in creating this integration and setting up their procurement system to make frictionless purchase. And that's what I attempted at making self-serve, right? So for example, something that could have taken 2 to 3 weeks, right? Because for example, people could be sitting on a call and then submitting an order for test purpose. And then on the other side of the call, someone says, yes, I got your order. Here is another example of order status. And if everything is fine, then they go live and open it up to the rest of the employees on enterprise side. So when you do not want to do that, I think the fastest integration I had seen was under 30 minutes. So it just opens up a lot of time and improves productivity when you really try and break those notions of how things used to be done and still in process.
That totally makes sense. I think you gave the test example where people want to, if they're opening it up to other employees, they want to make sure the product really works or making everything as frictionless as possible. Totally makes sense. Was there any, so in the B2B context, marketing is very different. So I guess A, were there any specific channels you guys used? And B, I think this word of consumption is a big world in a lot of the SaaS world. So do you guys do anything to drive like once a company partner with you, how to drive adoption, maybe not by the person in procurement or the person who bought it, but other employees in the organization?
Yeah. So the circle of influence, at least in my experience, was and probably still is a little limited when it comes to enterprise e-commerce sale or B2B commerce. For example, if a decision maker has decided that my employees are going to make their purchase from the 3 different laptops, and that is the circle of influence. And those employees are ending up purchasing one of those 3 laptops. That's what the decision maker decided. So yeah, I'm sure outside of my purview, there has to be a lot of marketing channels that do influence the decision maker, him or herself. But once that is done and the product catalog is approved by an enterprise, then yeah, employees are really working with whatever options are available to them in form of products. And at that point, yeah, you can still influence them through deals and discounts and however you want to shape your sales channel. But really, as I was saying, the circle of influence at that point, by the time the last individual employee is making a purchase, is narrowed down.
That totally makes sense. Basically, procurement has to decide, or whoever's in charge of that decision, they choose a vendor. And once they choose a vendor, if you need a laptop or whatever, you have to buy one. So I think one thing you mentioned was stuff about discounting and pricing. So how do you guys do that in e-commerce, B2B e-commerce world? Because a lot of times pricing in the B2B world is very custom, non-transparent. But in the consumer e-commerce world, everyone can see the exact prices there. So you guys think about pricing, discounting, especially in the e-commerce?
So during my time there in that role, I personally did not get involved in pricing decisions that like dictated how it works. Like a lot of my role involved facilitating those sales. So making sure that our discounting technology or pricing technology works just as expected. And I can probably make a leap of faith and describe how they do it, but that would be an overstatement on my part. Yeah, like from what I know, you are right. That's exactly how they do it on contractual basis. So based on the volume of purchase an enterprise is looking to make, there is custom price involved. And it, from my understanding, it can sometimes also be commitment based that, hey, we do intend to spend this much amount of money over next 12 months. And for that reason, this is the amount of percentage or dollar of discount we get on these products. But yeah, it's fairly custom and very contract based, especially when you're looking at large volume sales for enterprise.
That totally makes sense. You have to do it custom for each enterprise and their own needs. And then on getting some commitment or something like that, or guaranteed to give them the discounts. I think earlier in our conversation, you mentioned you were more doing a little more consumer facing earlier on, and you would do stuff like Black Friday sales or whatever. So what was your approach for discounting or pricing? And then one last question on the B2B side is from my understanding, like Dell is very partner driven. So you guys also sell through a lot of channel and stuff like that. So did that impact how you did stuff with the website? My understanding was like you guys also help them, maybe some distributors and stuff like that, making them have a easier way to sell the product and stuff like that. So maybe you could talk a little bit more.
Yeah, so these are like different sales motions. So of course you have got, and this is not specific to Dell, this kind of applies to general B2B commerce. You can go either straight or direct to these enterprises that need your products and services, or you may end up having channel partners and distributor partners, or both. So to answer your question, yeah, the purchase path or the experience that you end up providing for both those personas is slightly different. In case of partner experience, you end up having to serve their needs in a specific way because they are not really the end customer. Their customer is the end customer. So a lot of complexity, at least on technology front, is involved in making sure we have set those partners up for success and helping them serve their end customers. And it really feeds into some of the core parts of how we provide product catalog or pricing catalog, checkout experiences, as well as post-order experiences such as notifications for their order and fulfillment. Versus in on direct front, yeah, like you own those relationships with those end customers, quote unquote. Yeah, just think about it in a way where there are one or more tiers between you and that end customer that's finally going to have their hands on your product. And then you try and make sure that those tiers in between you and your end customer have what they need to succeed.
That totally makes sense. I really also like your point here where you're talking about the logistics, right? Really exposing the logistics to these intermediaries so they can also let their customers know. Are there any other kind of big points you wanted to mention about just anything in the B2B commerce space? Any key lessons, learnings?
One thing I would mention is, and I have not done this at some point, I may try it, but sometimes it's hard to do experimentation, whether it is in your user experience or let's say in pricing when it comes to B2B commerce, right? As I said, you have defined your circle of influence when you convert at the decision maker on an enterprise front to say, yes, I'm going to go with this vendor. But yeah, when it comes to that final person making that decision or the end customer making that decision as to which product to buy or which vendor to go to, there are opportunities for experimentation. And it varies from business to businesses. But yeah, that's one area where it would be interesting to see how new innovations can be done. Like while you're still bound by enterprise needs, but still introduce personalization for that end customer.
Sure. I think the point you're alluding to is these enterprises are much bigger. So you really don't want to mess up and there's less data. So it's very hard to experiment. Like you don't want to screw one enterprise over. And then just zooming out a little, just this, not as specific to Dell, but just based on your experience in the e-commerce world. I think on Amazon, you do a lot of kind of AI, computer vision type stuff. So what are the ways you think AI, computer vision will really impact the e-commerce world?
There are so many different places where AI could help, and you may already be seeing this happening right now without realizing. For example, there used to be a time where you'd spend a lot of time creating the best copy possible for your product descriptions and product details page. Now, yeah, like AI can generate those copies and compelling product descriptions for you. When you look at product imagery, like you did end up spending a lot of time and effort in getting best in class product imagery. But now AI, it is possible to really create amazing product imagery for your e-commerce. And as I was saying, like it may become harder to tell them apart, and we may already be experiencing it on different e-commerce experiences today. Yeah, those are some areas. Of course, providing support, etc. When customers have basic questions, like in legacy times or even now, like you end up calling someone and you end up having to press keys to eventually talk to someone, like that may still exist, but that those experiences can also become less painful over time. But these are just like a couple of examples. I'm sure there are hundreds of use cases people must be
I got
playing with
Are,
right now.
are there any ones you think that maybe aren't intuitive or not as hype or stuff that's further out that you would want to see built?
It's been a while since I dipped a lot on e-commerce front. As you alluded, I'm spending a lot of my time doing computer vision and vision AI stuff these days. But I guess with the maturity in how it is becoming easier to build solutions or custom solutions, I'm expecting productivity boost in anyone who is managing an e-commerce business, whether it is really coding the platform out or building integrations or, as I was saying, generating right sort of content for the websites and all that. Overall, it'd be interesting to see what kind of productivity boost AI brings and how it impacts the scale at which individuals operate. So that would be very exciting to see. But I wouldn't say it is not something people are paying attention to, but that is something that I'm really looking forward to, like how it improves everyone's productivity to operate at 10x or 100x than what they used to pre-AI proliferation.
Really good points there. And then last couple questions are more fun questions. What's in the maybe the last 6 months, the favorite online store, favorite brand you bought from online?
Uh, we got a puppy during pandemic, and she was always energetic after 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and she wanted to play a lot during our bedtime. And of course, that wasn't good. And then after doing some research, I realized, that is because she has excessive energy that she has not let out. And they say a tired dog is a happy dog. So I was looking for products that could help me with that need, so that I know how much exercise she has had and if we have played with her enough during the day so that she would sleep well, and by that extension, we would sleep well. And I came across this product called FI, and it's a dog collar with health monitor or activity tracker inside. So now it's my favorite thing to, at the end of the day, pull up that app and see how many steps did she walk. Is it 15,000, 20,000? And
I got you.
it's an interesting gamified experience where they would even rank my dog against other dogs in my area. Like,
Oh,
hey, you gotta keep up. This other dog that you've been competing with, like, did 30,000. And it also forces me to get out of the house and to walking, running, and stay active. That has been my most recent e-commerce purchase and has been fulfilling.
that's cool. Do you know the other dogs in the area so you personally know them or?
Now I do, because you can even follow them. And then there are communities on Facebook that of dogs that use this product. So they also do meetups and hiking and all of that.
That's cool. I'm sure it starts to get competitive, like a little friendly competition. Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd never heard of that, but yeah. I know like my friends, they have the competition with the regular staff.
Oh, nice.
You
Yeah.
have to, like go to those dogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Those are all the questions I had. Were there any more questions or things you wanted to discuss?
No, as I said, it's been a while since I deeper into e-commerce stuff, but I still do end up doing some e-commerce, some e-commerce stuff for different nonprofits that I'm helping. So I do help them recognize their limitations and opportunities, and like these nonprofits see a huge help in that as well. So that has been my way to stay involved in all things e-commerce, just helping nonprofit in my area and city.
Are there any specific nonprofits you work with or?
Yeah, I've been involved with this nonprofit for slightly over half a decade now. It's called IndieMeme, INDIEME. They are a nonprofit that focuses on bringing independent cinema from South Asian countries to the US, and specifically Austin, Texas. So every year we have this 4-day film festival where we first curate the films, and then bring filmmakers and actors and talent into the city of Austin and then screen their films and get them new audience. But there, yeah, all of their experiences that help audience members purchase ticket online and all of that is done through e-commerce, right? So if they have a question, if they need help, answer that question, help them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, because I noticed like film, at least just from my family and stuff like that, it's like a really big part of I think South Asian culture.
It is.
To
It is. Yeah.
other cultures.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the San Mahal podcast. Please make sure to subscribe.